Going live. Oops.
I hope this works.
Well, hello, everyone. So,
Well, hello.
Please ignore that voice in the background as I am about to tell you a story. In media res, imagine a smoke-filled room at the Cambridge Moral Sciences Club in October 1946. The tension is palpable as two of the most formidable minds of the 20th century, Karl Popper and Ludwig Wittgenstein, are locked in a heated debate. Wittgenstein, known for his intense demeanor, waves a fireplace poker in the air to emphasize his points. Popper, ever the contrarian, challenges Wittgenstein's assertion that philosophical problems are merely puzzles of language. Give us an example of a moral rule, Wittgenstein demands, brandishing the poker. Okay, imagining I'm holding a poker. Unfazed, Popper retorts, not to threaten visiting lecturers with pokers. The room erupts in laughter, but the clash is far from humorous. This famous encounter, now known as the poker incident, epitomizes the profound philosophical divide between these two titans. Wittgenstein's linguistic analysis versus Popper's empirical rigor. And so begins the exploration of Karl Popper's life, his contributions to the philosophy of science, and his enduring legacy. Wow, that was so beautifully written. I wonder who did it.
Wow. Yeah.
I know, it wasn't even a poem. It was better than a poem. So normally I start out with a poem. But what are you watching, as somebody will say?
Yeah. What are we watching? What is this?
Okay, so you're watching SG2 on Space, the only weekly space show. You can find us on YouTube. Go to this youtube.com/actiongo/streams, or you can look up SG2 on Space. So let me bring on the guy who wrote those wonderful words, since I cannot take credit for it. It's this fellow. Oops. Yeah, camera.
Hey, Shen.
There. So for
what
those
up, bro?
online watching, if Leonard appears to be in a different setting than he normally is, why is that?
Yeah, probably most people think that this is a fake background.
Yeah, it looks like you just put some random background. You know how people do that. Is that real?
I'm at a undisclosed remote location in the wilderness.
He's in his hidden bunker somewhere. I'm kidding.
This is my bunker. Yeah, this is my hidden bunker. Right. And
so your hidden bunker doesn't have the greatest internet connection, since you do freeze every like 5 seconds or so. Just a note.
Well, I'm still I'm still feeling good. So
yeah, the audio is coming
certainly a whole lot better than I deserve. So
definitely the audio is coming in pretty strong. I don't have any issues with that. It's just the video seems to be a little delayed in at times. So just a note. So for anyone watching, if Leonard seems frozen on the screen, it's not because he's trying to make a face. It's because
sometimes people will get frozen, in a strange. I mean, you should see yourself how you look to me.
So apparently, I look like I was frozen. I'm going to quote you. Frozen.
So we have there are some challenges. Yeah, there are some challenges with the network connection. And this is Sunday morning, and I don't even know what day it is. I think it's
this is for anybody watching live. It is Sunday. Today is
January 12th, 2025. Can you imagine that we're a quarter of the way? We're 25% finished with the 21st century.
I can't believe it.
You can't believe it.
Well, I don't know. Seems like things are passing by so fast.
That's what I think. So anyway, okay, I'm curious. I'm curious to know what did you want to talk about tonight?
Okay, I'm gonna leave the ticker running on the bottom as always for all my wonderful supporters and so forth. So with all that said, wanted to talk about last episode at the end of 2018. We started talking about Karl Popper for some reason and the falsifiability criterion or his theories. And then I think based on what you provided me, It seems like we would like to go into the full scope of his life and what he contributed. And also,
Oh, okay.
that wonderful in media res about what is it? You wrote the whole thing, right? That encounter between Wittgenstein.
So that's the poker. That's the poker incident. That's a thing that happened in 1946. What happened was that Karl Popper and Ludwig Wittgenstein, they kind of came from the same. They emerged from the same cultural milieu in Vienna. At the time,
Vienna
it was called
was a hotbed then for all these intellectual, philosophical, and psychological.
They had something called it was some kind of organization. Somebody I can't remember the name of it at the moment, but they had this organization, the Vienna Circle, Vienna Circle, and I think Wittgenstein was one of the members. Popper was not, but he kind of emerged in 1934. He sort of Karl Popper is the subject, and he sort of emerged onto the scene in among the a certain community of philosophers and scientists, with some what basically were groundbreaking ideas about the philosophy of science. And he wrote a book called Logic of Scientific Discovery, and he challenged established norms of scientific reasoning. And he argued that science advances not by confirming theories, which is what everybody thinks. Okay, I have a theory and I go out and I find evidence to confirm it. I keep doing that over and over and over again. But he challenged that, and he needed, and what he tried to argue was that science doesn't progress that way. Science progresses with bold hypotheses, a bold kind of, or vigorous, innovative idea, and then you can confirm it, okay, but that doesn't help you. You need to try to refute it. So that was a radical idea. And Wittgenstein,
why was that considered radical? I mean,
because nobody today who's talking about science, Neil deGrasse Tyson, or anyway, nobody's talking about what kind of things can we do to disconfirm something. So what Popper was saying was that, okay, here's the thing. First of all, let's back up for a second. So Karl Popper, right?
Instead of diving into all his work, let's go to his life.
He was born in 1902 in Vienna, and at that time Vienna was in a country called Austria-Hungary, which later kind of dissolved after World War I.
Understandable.
Okay, so his intellectual environment, it was a very rich intellectual environment. So he's growing up in Vienna's vibrant culture and scientific scene, and so he was influenced by thinkers like Albert Einstein and Sigmund Freud, and also Wittgenstein to some extent. But he clashed with Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein came from the same place. They were born almost the same time. Wittgenstein was a aristocrat, very aristocratic.
Get a picture of Wittgenstein. Keep talking.
Yeah, and Albert Einstein, and also there was a lot of like pseudoscientific things that were going on, like phrenology. Phrenology was like the shape of the skull or something like that, and also people were doing astrology, and
astrology's been around forever, though.
Right.
All right, go on.
So the contrast between Sigmund Freud and Albert Einstein was very stark to Popper, and his education and his early interests included psychology.
This guy is not Popper, by the way. For people,
this is not Popper.
Who is he?
This is Wittgenstein, and actually we can talk about him a little bit. Like he does look crazy. I don't think he was crazy. I think that he did have trouble getting along with people, but so did Popper, and that's why
Okay.
What? Yeah, story. Yeah. So the thing about Wittgenstein is, like, there was the and I'm having trouble with these names now. These he yeah the Wittgenstein, he was very intense, and he wanted to be a philosopher. He wanted to learn about philosophy, and he went to Cambridge, and he talked to some big wigs there, and he said, "Look, if you think I'm an idiot, then I'll go home." And you know, and it turned out that he had made very good impression on the professors and longtime folks at Cambridge. And they said, okay, you need to come here. And he basically, they thought, the people who were philosophers at that time, they thought that he had kind of like overturned philosophy. But I'm here to tell you, I have studied him and tried to understand what he was saying. And so he's the father of something called language games or word games. And so he said that all of philosophy is worthless. Basically, he became the head of the philosophy department by the end of World War II. He said it's all worthless. It's just language games. It's misinterpreting different ideas. And this was very offensive to Karl Popper. So
well, yes, I feel like Wittgenstein. We can talk about him a little bit, but let's not derail from talking about Popper's life.
Right. That's yeah. But I just wanted to. You need to put him in. You need to have. He sort of sets the context a little bit.
Got it.
So, as according to Popper, in the work that in the body of work that Popper advanced, there was this traditional view of science which involved this thing called induction. So, inductive reasoning means, and it's what you usually think of, like if I do an experiment and then I repeat the experiment and I keep getting the same result over and over again, then that sort of gains credibility, right? So repeated verification, and that sounds right? But in fact, that doesn't. There's no. So deriving general laws from a series of specific observations doesn't have any philosophical grounding. Meaning, so if you, and this goes back to David Hume and some early philosophers saying, look, just because I observe the sun rise every day, it doesn't, and I can formulate a general law that the sun will rise every day. Observing the sun rising every day, day after day after day, doesn't help me with understanding about that. So the thing to do would be a scientific theory would gain credibility through repeated verification. That's the traditional view of science. So, and the other thing is, a lot of people will think that if you just accumulate a lot of facts, right? So a lot of people like this. They think that
you. Sorry, why am I pointing the camera? Well, I'm just going to point at you. Am I? You accumulate a lot of facts.
Well, you can accumulate facts, okay?
Yeah.
And I think that most people if you go into a bar and sit down and start talking to people.
Yep. Go on.
Eventually the conversation will come to something like science, right? When people will be talking about science, and then they'll say, well, UFOs, and then they just talk about, different things. And so you just really can't talk to them because they just think that science is such an accumulation of all these facts, but you need to have ideas that connect everything together. So, for example, Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin, he in Darwinian evolution. The way I understand it, his notebooks are full of all kinds of notes about facts. Like these finches on the Galapagos Islands and the tortoises, and he sailed all over the world in the 19th century.
Yeah.
But if you look at his books, the books that he published, and then also his notes, as I understand, they have a lot of questions, a lot of things in there trying to challenge the ideas.
So you're saying like science? I mean, it's not about like just facts. these questions that are asked,
Right.
you know,
Right.
come up with theories to try to explain things.
So Popper, Karl Popper, he was very much influenced by Albert Einstein.
By the way, this is an example of Charles Darwin's notebook.
That looks like one of my notebooks. Yeah, that looks like my. Yeah.
Brilliant minds, I guess, write in writing that's nearly indecipherable, at least my perspective. All right, but anyways.
So that's pretty interesting. I like that. Yeah.
We keep this on and talk about Popper.
So I was going to say, so one of the things he noticed about Einstein was that Einstein made a bold prediction about his theory, which is that he wanted somebody to confirm. This has to do with general relativity, which is the curvature of space-time. Matter and gravity will distort space-time and cause curvature of straight lines. And so one of the things that he predicted was that the position of stars that could be observed close to the sun would be distorted slightly, and that was not observable in the daytime. In other words, there weren't any measurements that could be made of that in the early 20th century. And he tried to get people to go out and observe eclipses, and it took about 5 or 6 years before Eddington was able to observe an eclipse in Principe.
By the way, I noticed you have a giant telescope in the back behind your head.
There is?
You have a telescope behind you.
Yes, I know. I have a couple telescopes.
I mean, you use it to observe things?
Yes. Stop. Okay. I'm out in the wilderness. It's dark out here at night. Okay.
Sorry, that was a complete slight derailment.
Yeah. I do.
About the Eddington experiment of the.
Well, it was the observation of an eclipse.
Yeah, May 29th, 1919 solar eclipse. We talked about this before in the episode on general relativity, I believe.
Albert Einstein, yeah.
Look at that.
So it was a triumphant. It was a triumphant prediction that the stars that with locations that were just grazing the sun would have a distorted location. In other words, some stars that are behind the sun, that are eclipsed by the sun, would appear out on the limb, out along the limb, and it was confirmed. So it's a great triumph of his theory. So what Popper would say is that's good science. That's what we call a falsifiability criterion, because Einstein was going forward trying to. He said, "Look, if you don't observe this, my theory is wrong." Okay, and he took that risk. He actually didn't take very much of a risk, because the backstory about that is that he was quite confident about the result, because he had already done the calculation on the advance of the perihelion of Mercury. So actually, when I'm reading all about this, and I'm reading Popper, even Popper talks about this. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, Einstein knew, he already knew that the theory was right, but it was almost like he put on a pretense. I mean, he knew it was right. I think probably a number of people in his circle, immediate circle, knew that it was right.
Like, if this was not observed, then
the theory was wrong, right?
The theory would be wrong. Yeah. So,
now contrast that with Sigmund Freud. Okay, Sigmund Freud.
Okay. Contrast this with Sigmund Freud's theory.
Right. Okay. So Sigmund Freud had he collected a lot of clinical case studies, and it led to this psychoanalytic theory. So what's the way it's expressed is that there is nothing that you can observe in a human that can't be explained in terms of Freudian psychoanalytic theory. So if you were to suddenly jump up and down or do a handstand, that would be consistent. Yeah. Everything. Yeah. Or if you were to like jump in the lake, okay, if you didn't jump in the lake. That was all consistent. So Freud never advanced a bold assertion the way Einstein did. He said, I'm right, and it's like, obviously you have and then women all had the psychoanalysis of women's issues, women's what do you call neuroses, was all related to a singular focus on something having to do with the male anatomy, right? And it's crazy. I mean, it really is crazy. But there's nothing that Freud never offered
yeah. Okay.
Right.
You're saying you can't really prove it or disprove it.
You can't prove it. Everything was consistent with, and so that's not science. Okay, so if you hear people talking about an area of science, like when you're sitting in the bar talking to people, and they're talking to you about UFOs, or how the government has aliens in Roswell, or something like that. All of that. Yeah, that's to me, that's a pseudoscientific thing, because the only way you could prove it would be to go to Roswell and go into Area 51. But even then,
you're not going to go to the Roswell UFO Festival with me possibly this year. We can talk about that later. Go on.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So when you hear somebody say that there's no evidence that can change your opinion, so there's another thing called creation science, and that, to me, that's notorious, because you can even ask people who believe that this idea that the Earth is 6,000 years old, and people walked around with dinosaurs. You can ask them this question: what could I show you? What evidence could I show you that would persuade you, that the Earth is tens of millions or billions of years old? And they'll deny that there's evidence. I mean, I'm kind of speaking for them. We don't have one here to examine, but
yes, these creationists who take the creation story, say, from the Bible literally, like, how do you? I mean, but isn't it in a way like that can be easily shown, right? Like, you take this rock and you show, like, hey, this is dated to be millions of years old.
I know. So the answer to that is, of course, it appears to be millions of years old. It was created that way.
There's no way getting around it. Then, I mean,
that's right. So that is a signature of a pseudoscientific theory.
The pseudoscientific theory here then is that is basically rejecting evidence, or basically twisting evidence in a sense that already fits your existing theory. So in other words, your theory can never be falsified.
Right. And so people are uncomfortable with this. And I don't even really so the idea that this idea of induction, like he's skeptical of induction, meaning he doesn't want to hear about how you confirmed your theory. He wants to hear about what did you do that risked disconfirming your theory.
Right.
It's a subtle kind of thing. So he says you make so in one of the books that I read.
Can you briefly talk about induction, since you just mentioned it, assuming people know what that is?
Well, induction is I mentioned is it's like do you derive a general law from specific observations, right? So you take a lot of observations. So I think Bertrand Russell what he mentioned about what induction is. There's a turkey, right? You're a turkey, right?
Go ahead, explain the turkey.
And every day the farmer comes out to feed you, right? At like a bell rings, and then the turkeys come and he feeds you, and he does that every day, and pretty soon the turkey learns that when the bell rings, I get fed. One day the bell rings, and it's right before Thanksgiving, and the farmer comes and you're not fed, So that would be deriving a general rule from induction. And and you're thinking, well, that has to be right, but we don't have. There isn't a theory behind it. It's actually faith. It's actually a kind of faith. And I remember reading in his book, Conjectures and Refutations. There's the book that influenced me was a book called Conjectures and Refutations. And I remember reading, he said that actually the idea that what science is about is a world view that induction is veridical, meaning veridical means gives you a truthful reflection of what reality is. And I don't want to say that that's not true exactly, but that's what science is. And you have, as a scientist, you have a irrational faith that induction is veridical, right? So it is, and I think that if most scientists actually realized that, they wouldn't be so critical of people with strange religious beliefs, because your faith in induction, and people are like outraged. It's like, oh my God, how could you say that the sun's going to rise tomorrow, right?
I mean, yeah. How do you?
So you could argue, that induction is the true faith, right? Because
it's the true faith in that you've observed this happening once, and it continuously keeps happening over and over again, and it seems to follow this pattern, and so you just assume that it's going to keep going.
Right, but what I remember in Popper's book, he mentions this, that that it actually is a matter of faith that it's going to happen, and I don't think anybody can deny that. I mean, it's just that it doesn't feel good to say it's faith, right? I don't have faith. I have a firm conviction, so because they don't want to, because the idea that you're faithful to an idea is scandalous, because it suggests that it's unthinking and so forth. So Popper had some things like that to say. So he said, things like, so in order for science to be done properly, you need to make these conjectures, risky conjectures, not simple things like the way Freud talked about, or the way creation.
I don't know if that's simple, but the point is, what Freud was talking about cannot be ever proven.
And that I think that in these days, I think that maybe psychology is on a more scientific footing, and Freud Freud had some right ideas, some verifiable ideas, like the idea of subconscious or unconscious and that kind of thing. So, but
moving back to Karl Popper, go on.
Oh, well, so anyway, among the things that Karl Popper would regard as falsifiable, meaning he would use this term falsifiable, was general relativity, the way we talked about Einstein, making a risky prediction.
Right.
He colleague, and I can't remember the first name, a guy, Eccles, Joseph Eccles, or he was a biologist, and so he had in the early 60s, he had this theory about electrical conduction in nerve fibers, because they were trying to figure out how nerves work. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that all of the conduction, all of the signal conduction in nerves is chemical. It's actually a chemical transfer, and then that between the synapse, all of that was being elucidated in the early 60s. And so this guy Eccles had he had this theory that it was an electrical conduction, some kind of conduction of electrical signal. And he kind of persisted in that for a while. He was friends with Popper, and then he finally came up with a test, like overnight, to disprove his theory. So it was So he kind of triumphantly said, "Hey, I'm wrong," and we figured this out overnight. And so that would be an example of the proper conduct of a scientist, would be somebody that risks and and in these days it's kind of hard because we have so many lawyers and politicians, and so the purpose of lawyers and politicians, lawyers and politics, your purpose is not to elucidate truth. Your purpose is to
support what your client's paying you for.
Pure conviction. Okay, you see, you want, and so that's why you'll hear some politicians say the debate is over. So why,
great politician voice there, by the way.
What?
I said you just changed your voice.
Yes, the debate is over. The time for action is now. So, so whenever you hear somebody say the debate is over, you know that they're not talking science. They're not seeking truth. They're seeking conviction.
So right? let me ask you this then. According to that, the debate is never over then, right?
All science is provisional. Nothing is ever certain. This kind of goes against the Cartesian idea that because Descartes always
never certain. We learn all these scientific theories in school, and assuming you go in the profession, you practice them too, assuming you're in the science field. But none of that's certain. That's what you're saying.
That's right. And you need to be committed to that. You can't be going around saying, well, this is true, and I don't want to hear anything. You've heard me talk about string theory. You probably don't want to hear me talk about string theory, but I believe that we're starting to learn that string theory in its the superstring theory in its current
incarnation
is a kind of pseudoscience because there's nothing that it doesn't explain. There's nothing it doesn't explain. If you have a new observation like dark matter appears, they'll go, dark matter. Oh no. Well, wait, we can adjust our theory to make dark matter, incorporate dark matter. That's a real signal. That's a red flag. And so,
let's compare, say, like string theory. Okay, the general relativity, right? The Eddington solar eclipse that was observed, and the phenomenon matched what general relativity would predict in terms of how the light bends, right?
Right.
So if light did not bend that way, then you could say, okay, well, let's throw out general relativity, or
that's right.
You got to modify it. String theory, on the other hand, what ends up happening there is that you observe something, and it's like, well, string theory did not predict this will happen. Let's just go back to string theory, modify a few things to make it work, which is right. Not a good theory at all.
Well, it means that well, you have,
because it also cannot predict anything. Like it cannot predict.
It seems like there's nothing that string theory predicts. So it sounds a lot like psychoanalysis.
So that's I was going to say that what makes a good theory, and this may be part of the falsifiability criterion, is it's also the ability to predict, right? Not just observe what happened, not just explain what happened, but also predict what has not yet happened.
To predict to provide a framework for testable predictions, like light bending around a massive object.
Right.
So so that's it's a little bit subtle, and I'm not sure that I'm articulating it right. I may not even completely understand the main import of it, but I think I know it when I see it. So there's that's the Popper admired real scientists like Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, and Max Planck for that reason.
Real scientists versus fake
right
scientists.
and he had a lot of criticism for psychoanalysis, and also linguistic analysis, the stuff that Wittgenstein that we started with.
Yeah, go back to that wonderful poker. What do you call it?
Yeah. So by the end of World War II, first of all, Popper escaped to New Zealand all during the Second World War. Both Popper and Wittgenstein were descendants from the Jewish ethnic group, but they were Christians. They were not, which is a little kind of unusual. But Popper escaped to New Zealand and he lived there. I think he was kind of struggling that way, and it seems like his nemesis Wittgenstein, had a rose lined path, to his
So Popper during World War II had to run away since he has a Jewish background.
Well, everybody got broken up in the 30s, because there was, I don't know, there was like some political problems, serious political problems in Germany during the 30s.
I'd be laughing about this because it was not a funny time for people.
It was not a funny time. That's right. But I mean, and so he escaped. They all went to the West because it's free. Popper was also, another thing about Popper was he was like a political philosopher also. So he had a lot of things to say about the best kind of government and that kind of thing. So he wrote a lot about that when he was in New Zealand. But his philosophical thing, his philosophical musings or writings about falsifiability and conjectures and refutations were advanced in the 40s, and so that he relocated to England. And he was invited to that Cambridge Moral Sciences Club in 1946.
Look at that.
Karl Popper.
English heritage.
Yeah, he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth, I think, in 1963. It's so wild about Queen Elizabeth II. It's like she was queen for so long that, from the time I was born, she was the Queen of England. Of course, we're Americans, but I mean, yeah. And so it's so strange. And then she passed away at a good ripe age there. But it seems strange, I can't explain that.
Is it something that was given to him by the Queen, or I don't know what this is?
Well, you see where it says "Sir" up there?
Oh, sir, yeah. So you got to be knighted or something, and the only person who can do that is the monarchy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was knighted. I don't know if Wittgenstein was or not, but both of them were in England at that time. They were relocated there. So they had this. So Popper got invited to talk at this meeting, and Wittgenstein, had already destroyed philosophy. He was the head of the philosophy department, and he said, there is no philosophy. It's just word games, just language games. And I'm telling you, I'm here to tell you, I don't understand what he's talking about. It seems to me that there are.
Okay, sorry. Continue talking about philosophy.
I don't understand. Go on Wikipedia and go read about Wittgenstein and see if you can figure out what he's saying. He's saying that, it's just disagreements or misunderstandings about words and stuff like that. It's like
ideas are not even philosophy is not real in the sense it's just playing with words.
Yes, I'm not kidding you. That's what he was saying. It's just playing with words, and he even called it language games. And Popper pushed back against that because he really was talking about these kinds of things that we're talking about today, which has to do with falsifiability and so there is a science to philosophy, and it's about real things. And when you read Wittgenstein, there's no examples of anything, and it's so vague. And
it could just go and look at, I don't know, this Wikipedia entry talking about language. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, but if you read Popper's talking about Einstein. He's talking about general relativity. He's talking about specific things, and he has exact examples. And he's not hard to read. He has an unusual style because he writes in the first person. He says, "I did this," and I did. So it's sort of
all that, but yeah.
And from what I understand, his scientific papers are even like that. Where he writes them in.
Right, in first person. Yeah, something I'm told I should not be doing. All right, go on.
Right. Yeah, actually, when I worked at Boeing, I used to write, technical reports and I would say, Yeah, and then people would try to, like younger people would come in and try to rewrite it, and because I said, well, I did this, and so and I go, well, it was done. Well, I mean, what do you mean it was done? Isn't it better to just say I did this? Yeah, but it's not scientific,
Well, you did do this, so just leave it be, right? So yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, but Wittgenstein was his nemesis, really, as far as so in this meeting. Popper gets up and says, I think he said some impolitic things, insulting, whatever he was saying was directly challenging all of this settled stuff, philosophy or discourse or whatever you want to call it. and then Popper gets up and gives exact examples and so forth. And so that was what happened. And so evidently Wittgenstein, both of them were very irritable kind of people, difficult to get along with. But Wittgenstein picked up the fireplace poker
and then proceeded to not do much with it.
So he waved the poker around and so at a certain point he says, all right, fine, give me an example of a moral rule. And then Popper came back and said, well, here's a moral rule for you. Don't threaten visiting lectures with fireplace pokers. And then the way so the way it's written about, and the reason we know about this is because Popper wrote this in one of his later books, and Wittgenstein threw the poker down and then stormed out of the room, and nobody heard from him. Now the thing is that a particular event was remembered by people in the late 90s, and so there was a newspaper investigation in England where a lot of people were writing in. I don't remember it that way. The way I remember it, they remembered it differently, and so that's sort of amusing. But anyway, that was the poker incident. So it sort of highlighted or epitomized that profound philosophical divide between these two guys.
So, by the way, this falls into not just philosophy of science with this debate, but also the philosophy of language.
Well, according to modern, I think a lot of modern philosophy departments, that's what it's all about, is like linguistics and language, and that seems to be the approach that's taken. But I don't understand it. I confess that I'm anxious for people to explain this to me. I think I understand Popper very well, not as well as maybe I would like, but so anyway, if we wanted to put a final underscore on this, Popper Popper advances this idea that science has to be a series of conjectures and refutations, and so you make bold predictions about your theory, and if it doesn't have that, right, or if it's trivial, like I measured the sun came up and the sun came up again, that doesn't do it. You have to have something that risks making it wrong, and it's slippery, sort of slippery. So you need to continually attempt to refute it. I would say I don't know if I want to go there or not.
You can find the free book, by the way. I just put it on. Popper's Conjectures and Refutations.
Conjectures and Refutations. I have the book. I was looking for it. I can't find it. It's in my house somewhere.
Is this only 22 pages, or is this?
No. It's a thick volume. I think it's like 300-400 pages.
All right. So this is apparently just like the first chapter of the book. So if you want to get the book, you can probably find it at a bookstore.
You can get it at a bookstore, or if you can find a bookstore that has it, and you can buy it, and it will be worn, maybe a used one, and it will have a sole to it.
Yeah.
Right?
Versus buying it on Amazon where it has no sole, apparently.
Or even worse, getting the the electronic version of it on Kindle.
Oh yeah. Get a Kindle version. That's like even less than soulless.
That's right.
Negative soul right there.
So I think kind of that's all I really had to say about Popper. He's important because he advanced this idea of falsifiability. He insisted that science is always provisional. So when you hear somebody saying the debate is over, okay, you know that that's not science. That immediately, that's not science. Okay, right? Sometimes you'll hear that, right? And that's so you might be talking about something important and valuable, but you're not talking about science. And then also what's called demarcation. Okay, so the way to distinguish science from non-science, he sort of invented the word pseudoscience. So he declared Freud's psychoanalytic theory as pseudoscience in the same place as astrology and okay, here's one. What do you call with put the pins? Acupuncture. Okay.
See,
that's good.
I noticed on the notes that you put under pseudoscience acupuncture.
Yeah.
I guess I must.
So what do you have to do? You have to propose an experiment that will prove it wrong. Okay. What kind of experiment could you advance that would disprove acupuncture? Risk that. What kind of risky prediction could you make?
I can't say I know enough about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know about it. I mean, so there's these.
You could say like, hey, I mean, you could put two different groups, right? A control group which doesn't have, doesn't undergo acupuncture, and another group that does, that has similar conditions.
Right, but that's you could do that. But I propose the way to test acupuncture is to bring people in who don't really know acupuncture, but then because the acupuncture requires that you put the needle in a particular place, right, and to treat them for. So I don't know. I don't know what the thing is, but you would put a needle in my finger or the back of my hand in order to treat some pain or some ailment that I had in my knee. Okay.
I propose does get acupuncture on a fairly regular basis, and
I know. So you keep repeating it over and over again and proving that yes, it helps me with my pain.
Yes.
Okay, but pain is subjective, right? So it's like but hear me out. I propose you get 40 people, or a cohort of 80 people. You divide them up into two subsets that are 40 people, and you get your acupuncture practitioners to do the quote right therapy on the right meridian lines in the right place, and then you give them. Then in the other group, you give them you place the needles in the wrong place.
Oh, okay. So that's what you're saying. I see.
Right. And I don't think you can look high and low. I've tried to find this. You can look high and low. You won't find that experiment done anymore.
Well, I mean,
you won't find any.
I mean, people will have to have a degree of like trust in that. You putting the needle in the wrong place doesn't have a negative impact.
That's right. You need to it's kind of underhanded, because you're telling people that, well, you could get volunteers, right? And you could
to run
and if you put the needles in the wrong place, nothing bad's going to happen. There's nothing.
Yeah.
So my personal belief is that there's no basis for it whatsoever other than psychosomatic. It's like and because the kind of claims that I hear are made for it, that
I mean, like culturally speaking, I'm not saying I believe everything, but I don't know. Like maybe I've never thought it was a false theory, but scientifically speaking, I suppose you might be right in that maybe my belief in it could be more on faith rather than actual science.
Well, I mean, that's, I mean, you do have faith in induction. We all have, all scientists have a devout faith in that induction is a veridical process. But that's beside the point. But I'm just pushing back on this. Look, I don't know. I want to see that experiment, right? And then I become convinced. But if you just go, I go to the acupuncturist. The other one is, what is it? The manipulating the spine.
Chiropractors?
Chiropractic.
I mean, like, is that considered real? I mean, I don't know. They say it like, yeah. Anyway.
Well, all of those kind of things have the characteristics of pseudoscience. I mean, deal with it. I mean, they just do. Maybe there's falsifiable experiments, people who have actually gone in and tried to disprove it. But there's a lot of pushback against that. So, and I'm trying to be deliberately provocative to a certain extent.
Yes. So for myself, I gotta admit, maybe I do believe in some of those things known as pseudosciences. Not creation, not like the literal creationism or astrology, say, but if you're putting, say, acupuncture in there or other types of healing methods. I think you joked about doing Reiki one point on me or something, or just saying that, sending out energy, right? Like
the crystal energy.
Yeah. So. No, not crystal. Well, I have crystals too, a little bit, just mineral stuff.
Right.
Point is, like, you're probably thinking, okay, no scientific proof. What? You're just a rock right there, and the Reiki stuff with the hands emanating energy.
Right.
I've like gone through some of that, and I don't know. Maybe it does something.
Okay, well, anyway, conjectures, deductive testing,
but yes,
attempting to refute it. If it survives these attempts to refute it, then it's a scientific theory. Okay. It has to, and it has to be continuously tested.
So I suppose the point here I'm making is that certain things I believe in, I will admittedly say cannot be proven. It can't, with the falsifiability crime, you can't ever falsify it. I mean,
well, then it's not science. Okay. Then yeah. I really agree that if you have a theory that cannot be falsified, that it can't be, then it's either trivial. Okay. It could be trivial, or it's not science.
This rock, like, this was like, I think 2 years ago. Was it? No, it wasn't. No, it was a year and a month ago in December. I was giving this rock, and the guy who gave me was part of my Tai Chi group, and he was saying, well, this symbolizes transformation. So, if you hold on to it, then, this is a sign to come. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to touch this rock, and then my life is going to change. And sounds crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it did change in many ways, like all throughout last year.
Okay.
There's no scientific basis for this rock doing anything. But for some reason, I think, I don't know, maybe it's just like, see, my head, it's a little strange, right? So this is complete pseudoscience. I even agree to that. But it doesn't change the notion that I have that maybe in some weird way there is some effect. So anyway, I don't know where I'm going with this. I guess what I'm saying is that even for me, even when I recognize something is pseudoscience, I may still have some strange belief in it.
Okay. And maybe there are UFOs. Maybe the government is keeping aliens.
Really, it's not even that strange when I think, because when you think about all the religions in this world, nobody's if you say somebody has faith in God,
maybe the Earth is flat.
Go prove it to me. What's the science behind it? And this person can't say anything, right? They're like,
it's not science.
Yeah, there's nothing. Or I have this stuff that happened to me that shows God is watching over me, or whatever, blah blah blah. Yeah. I think you could always say, okay, it's a bunch of coincidences, right? Like you can't prove that, Mm-hmm. So in that sense, then a huge majority of this world lives following pseudoscience, basically.
Yeah, well, I mean, you just turn on the cable news, you know, and the whole world is an entertainment. You're just being entertained by.
Well, like
I don't disagree with that.
I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say here is, and maybe this is just like this is me spouting my personal view, is that pseudoscience, has this connotation that somehow it's like not a good thing to. Is it a label? I mean, it seems like a negative label almost.
I think there's merit to the idea that it's a negative label. Did it ever occur to you that acupuncture was a hoax, or and I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying, did it ever occur to you? Did it ever occur to you that what is the chiropractic? That chiropractic was not, didn't have any effect? You always assume so because that's what you hear all the time. But did you ask yourself, what is the experimental evidence? What could I do to disprove it? Right? What could I do to show that it was not? So people generally don't do that. And so if you're a scientist, you need to be in that zone. And actually, it's not even just in a science. In general, anything where you have to have something that's veridical, something that's true, right? Which I claim is that's what science is a search for truth. A way of thinking. That if you're not always thinking about how do I disprove this, right? You put yourself in a zone. You put yourself in a zone where you're only getting confirmation.
Well,
like people who watch the American TV news channels, like they wake up.
I mean, you're just gonna. That's like what does it call that? Like, you just keep watching things that already reaffirm what you already believe.
That's right. You just watch the things, and actually, you have to realize that there's a whole world out there, a whole business world that's dependent upon putting products in your face to get you to buy it. Right. Advertising. They don't want to waste 1 second on somebody who they can't model exactly how they behave. Right. And so one of the things that I've observed in my lifetime is that with the appearance of these news channels is that, and I'm not going to say which one, let's not
get too political here, but go on.
Right. And so you need to, if you're in a world like that where you find yourself only listening to confirmation, things that confirm what you believe, right? You're in a place where the rest of the world is getting more and more threatening to you because you don't know. You need to talk to the people that you disagree with, the people that don't have the same opinions as you. Like if you live in New York, you need to go to Austin, and likewise, if you live in Houston, you need to go to San Francisco, right?
Right. I mean,
and open yourself to try to steel man how other people believe, because otherwise you're putting yourself into a little world. Right. And you think you know everything, but you don't. You're only listening to the same thing over and over and over again. Right. So anyway, that's my rant for today. I think people are all turning us off now. And
I don't know. I mean, this is interesting, your point. I mean, you're right. Like most people, when they I mean, it's much more comfortable to talk with people that already believe the same things you do, right?
That's right. But think about it. I mean, so we just got done with this ridiculous election, right? Okay. and so there's one side that believes one thing, and they can't, and then there's another side that believes another thing, and they're about equally divided, and it's tens of millions of people. Right? So how do tens of millions of people disagree with you? How does that happen? Why is that? What do you think? Tens of millions of people disagree with you. How do you account for that?
I mean,
And you know, for the most part, people don't cope with that confrontation very well.
you could say like billions of people probably disagree with you or me, like in this world, on certain fundamental things.
Well, I'm just talking in the realm of American politics
Right.
or
I
North
mean,
American politics. So it's very disturbing to me.
I mean, when you put it that way, I think like when you go into politics or religion or anything like that, I don't even know how science could factor in there in terms of, because like a lot of those things become more of like an emotional sort of core belief that you have, right? And then like I don't know, like then that's like
I
to convince someone into like, say, you and I talk about UFOs a lot. I mean, I'm just using that example.
yeah.
And then I'm like, and then we even do whole episodes where I'm like, whoa, extraterrestrial life is probably here already. And, they're probably pretty common. And then you obviously have like the opposite view. And then it's like, do I have any evidence? I don't. I mean, this is just what I think, what I like, yeah. And like, but my point here is all that like, I don't know. I mean, like, there's much of this world is not based on like science, I would say. Like people's
Really?
behavior is ruled by things that does not fall into the purview of science. People's behaviors
Okay.
and what
So
they choose to believe, I suppose.
yeah, it's just wildlife in a park, you know,
Yeah.
a wildlife park.
I mean, like, I think about like there's billions of people going to church today on Sunday, right? In this world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I would assume if you're going to go to church, you're either a Christian or thinking like you believe, at least believe some of it. And so, like, with that said, like, can that ever? I mean, that's if we were basing it on what Karl Popper saying, that's like complete pseudoscience. It's like all these people are going there worshiping like some invisible deity.
I think I think as far as Karl Popper, and if you want to use that as criticism, you know, because there are people who do disagree with him, and they do think that you should continue, you know, that the idea of inductive reasoning is a critical, you know, he was very critical of using induction as a source of you know, in other words, just confirming a hypothesis was not adequate, because you need to disagree. So in the sense that religion is a place where you go to find people who tell you what to think, what to believe, who don't challenge, you know, the way these kind of ideas, who are afraid of ideas. You know, it's not science. It's not going to lead you to truth. It's going to put you in a place where the rest of the world eventually, I believe, it'll eventually put you into a bubble, and the rest of the world is going to be very threatening to you. So,
I definitely know of like say Christians who I would think the only other friends they have for the most part are other Christians.
other Christians, yeah, and
And
even you don't even want to interact or talk to people.
Like I had a friend from a while. I'm not going to name any names, but like I don't know, he converted Christianity a while back, and then I guess that's where he's he's really involved with this church and all and everything. And I just feel like you kind of like put yourself in that bubble, right? So, and everybody around you
Correct.
believes the same thing and all that. For myself, naturally, like look at me, like I'm engaging with you, Leonard, who we agree on many things, but also disagree on a number of things.
Oh, I
So,
didn't know that. Why do you disagree with me? That's where
where do I disagree?
where have you gone wrong?
Where have I gone wrong? Well, no, I mean, I know you're laughing at this, but like, what I'm saying is like, I like to keep an open mind. You know, I like talking to different people from all sorts of backgrounds.
Yeah, you do. You are like that. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, like even from the face, like scientifically, I like talking to you and other people, like faith wise. I mean, I go to churches. I've gone to like temples. I haven't gone to synagogues. or mosques. Now I think about it, but I've definitely like gone to a bunch of different like religious traditions to see like what they're talking about. Not saying I believe it, but just to understand. Um, but yeah, I mean, like it's really it can be illuminating to hear what what leads different people to believe different things.
I agree.
So, but all that said, I mean, I've realized like a huge part of it. I mean, most people aren't living their life based on like they're not structuring their life based on science. I would just put it that way. Like other
Okay.
So you might be. I mean, like like for
Well, I
instance,
mean, I do address various.
you mentioned acupuncture, and I'm going to ask you, like, would you pay a bunch of money to go see an acupuncturist?
Absolutely.
You would?
Yes.
Why?
It would be an illuminating experience.
Oops.
Somebody did try to hypnotize me one time.
Oh yeah, I've gone through that too. And did that work, or did you feel?
No,
like
it didn't. It didn't work. But I kind of went along with it.
Okay.
And other things like that. Like sometimes I'll talk to people about crystal energy and
crystal energy.
So no, I'm open to all these kinds of things, and often you'll find me,
really pretty.
Here I am on the television, not the television, but the YouTube thing here, and I'm telling people that. But I mean, if somebody is discussing one of these issues like crystal energy or Christian, their Christian beliefs or Mormon, I take it seriously, and I'm not kidding about that. I treat it as a serious proposition addressed to truth, right? Sometimes it's kind of like you keep mentioning truth. I find that very condescending and threatening. It's like, okay.
I don't think. I think the truth you believe in is like. I don't think science can ever give ultimate truth. I mean, we're always developing more theories.
Well, it's not only that. It's not only that. You can't. And this gets back to Popper. Popper would not say that you have ever achieved truth. You can only ever approximate it, right? And you have to continuously challenge, right? And so that's what he's trying to say. And I agree. I think there's something to that.
Well, when people talk about like truth, like this is it, like when they say that is a matter, I believe it's like a matter. It's that is a faith. Then it's not science. I mean, when you're saying
what do you mean?
Huh? Like, what do I mean is like when let's just say people who believe that God created this universe or this world.
That's a faith.
Yeah,
yes.
There you go. And then they'll be like, that is the truth. And then you say if you're a Christian, you're saying like, well, Jesus doesn't come down and save all of us, blah blah. Well, okay, that is.
Hold on, time out. So, or as a scientist, you would say, I believe that induction is a veridical process, right? And that is my faith.
Yeah. So even science itself, like to believe in theory, it requires faith. So much less to say stuff that is not traditionally not considered science. That is definitely, and when you say truth there, I mean I mean any absolute truth is non-scientific.
I think that's probably correct. Although there is something called deduction as opposed to induction, where I can make like I can have like some axioms, like a set of integers, set of real numbers, and then define operators between them, and then I can prove that 2 and 2 is 4. Or I could have a chessboard with a set of rules, right? And so I can arrange
when you define those rules, and when you define those fundamental axioms, what like you kind of set up your own structure.
That's right. You set up the structure. But so those would be things like deductions, where you would deduce something from a set of axioms that you declare to be true, right? So inside of that structure, which would be like a formal system,
Mm-hmm.
you can say, okay, this is true. Like the chessboard in a particular orientation. Yes, there is a set of movements that can lead to the arrangement of chess pieces on the board, right? So you can say that's true. But as far as using induction for that purpose, you can't. I know the sun. Don't you think the sun will rise tomorrow? Yeah, I actually do think the sun will rise tomorrow. But I don't have a formal proof of that. I can't prove that. I can just appeal to induction.
Well, I mean, can't you just say, like, you've used the sun rising many times in this episode? Can't you say that, from, I guess, probably relativity, or if you just look at classical mechanics, say, in astronomy, we're orbiting the sun and we're rotating.
Well, okay. So that's true. That's
So
you have a point.
rise.
You have a good point there. If I can elucidate the mechanism of the solar system and how the Earth turns and that kind of thing, then given those axioms, right, I can deduce that the sun will rise every day. Actually, the sun doesn't rise. I rotate into
it seems rotating. Effective that it rises.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, these are kind of, I'm not a, I don't, probably some people who like major in philosophy or professional philosophers or people who know a lot more about this than us, are probably shaking their heads and saying, but this is the project that I have some interest in. So,
well, I mean, it is definitely interesting. That's for sure. So,
and I do like the idea that the science is predicated on faith, which is scandalous, but it's faith in the inductive, in the veridical
based
nature,
on inductive reasoning, right?
Inductive reasoning, good science. Good science is based upon conjectures. In other words, proposals, hypotheses, whatever, bold hypotheses that are then subject to rigorous falsification. You have to think of things, and I don't mean it's and also science is just not a collection of facts, right? Which is kind of what I think a lot of people think it is. It's like a bunch of facts. Like I think Karl Marx. I mean, I don't know very much about it. I think Karl Marx thought that the world just kind of ran by itself, and he talked about things like means of production and stuff like that. But he never really. So Marxian economics is a pseudoscience. Yeah, it would. Right, and so that was the problem. He didn't think about, well, somebody needs to invent the car, somebody needs to invent the assembly line, all of the things having to do with capital, and he didn't. Somehow it just magically occurred because of a thrust of history, right? So Popper was very critical of that also, as are a lot of people. So anyway, acupuncture, phrenology, astrology, creationism, those are pseudosciences
there
until proven otherwise.
The falsifiable scientific disciplines are general relativity. I mean, these are just some of them: Darwinian evolution, psychoanalysis, Newtonian physics.
Well, so psychoanalysis would be considered one of those things that can fail, falsify. You can, so I would characterize psychoanalysis as a pseudoscience, and I think that's what Popper came to also.
Right. Okay, never mind. Since you can't really fully falsify it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So all right. So that was, so we mentioned acupuncture, and it pointed out that it is possible to falsify acupuncture.
It is.
And we need to see, and there has to be some reason why those tests have not been conducted, or we can't find any evidence that they've been conducted.
Have you thought for something like that? Maybe there is and this is me. So I'm already going to state out that I my faith in acupuncture is based on pseudoscience. But let me take a step back and just say, what if the reason those studies have not been done is because there is an existing, like, what do you call it, establishment, let's just say, in traditional Chinese medicine, who does not want that to be questioned?
Well, then that would be pseudoscience.
I mean, I'm thinking that might be a reason why.
There's a reason. Yeah, there's a reason why. And I could be completely wrong. Maybe you can produce these papers where they've been peer reviewed and they've done an experimental procedure, double blind, or
Right.
they've done tests on animals. Like maybe you could do do
But
acupuncture, right?
I mean, it kind of makes sense in a way, though, that like if there's already a lot of people believing this, like, why rock the boat in trying to show that it's not real?
I mean, the thing is that the problem with it is that right now we don't think that acupuncture is I think the field of acupuncture is, they still have ethical bounds on them, so that an acupuncturist who has a patient with cancer who comes in, I don't think they're going to treat you for cancer. Okay. I think they may treat you for it, but then they're going to refer you to non-traditional for traditional therapy, traditional medicine, as opposed to non-traditional medicine, which is not medicine. Non-traditional medicine is not medicine. Okay. So I think that in the particular case of acupuncture, they know that their discipline is dependent upon them doing no harm.
Right. I may be oversimplifying things. I mean, it would seem like if you could show that your discipline has more validity, then more people would have like actual, like,
right,
I would go to this, instead of wondering right now whether it's a pseudoscience and then not. Okay.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize the fact that it's like it's true. I am skeptical of acupuncture. I'm skeptical of chiropractic. And also, I guess you remember these cases where people would go to these hand healing people, and they would do pseudo surgery where there'd be this bloody mess coming from somebody's stomach, and they would appear to pull organs or tumors out of somebody's stomach. Have you seen that?
Is that like they're not actually pulling it? They're just pretending?
It's a magic. Yeah, it's they palm a chicken liver, and then they pull a chicken liver out, and they go, it's like, oh, that's not supposed to come out, and they put it back, So and well, they don't literally do that,
but you're saying that seems so out there. Like, you don't think there's any validity there?
I don't think there's any validity to it whatsoever. I think a sleight of hand magician could do all of those things that you see, and those people can do real harm, because people can become
you're saying they could turn to that instead of actually going to see established medical practices.
That's right. So especially somebody who has a serious serious ailment. I know that some some Christian faith healers used to go on television, and they would, put your hand up to the TV screen and I will heal you, that kind of thing. It's ludicrous. I mean, it's like,
so you don't believe in faith healing from a distance?
I don't. I think that it's a proposition that can be tested according to Popper and
scientifically. You could test this, I suppose, in the sense that you could get somebody doing this faith healing and then see if there's any effect on people. And then people who don't accept it, like similar people, and see if there's really any noticeable health effect.
Yeah, and so there's some reason why those things are not. You don't see any papers written about that, and the reason is, I think that it depends. It's very much a defense of the. So. I will say, I think that the faith healers that go on television, with the.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You probably never saw that, but I remember seeing a particular faith healer who would go on television and he would say, "Put your hand up to the screen," right? And
Oh my gosh.
and I mean, and I think he was recorded. I think it was a
Right.
it wasn't even live, right?
Okay. So
I don't I would like to put that to a a falsifiability condition. What could I do to disprove that?
Well, to disprove that, you do that experiment, right? Get
I would think of something, just like with the acupuncture or with
mean,
chiropractic.
Okay, I think
this
there's
has been
there's a whole bunch of theories out there that could be disproved. These studies, either I'm not aware of them or they just haven't been done yet. And so
yeah.
And who knows why it hasn't been done?
Oh well, I think we do know why it's not done. So, but anyway, we've been going on for an hour and 20 minutes. This is like it's almost a record, I think. And who would have thought? Who would have thought that such a dull topic as Karl Popper and
why is that such a dull topic? You're talking about what a good scientific theory means. It's actually, if you look at it, that's pretty interesting. At least my view. But
okay.
All right.
Do you want to talk about anything else? That's all I had to say about Karl Popper that I can think of.
I mean, I think you talked enough about it. So,
okay.
For anybody who's interested, you can read his book, Conjectures and Refutations.
Yes, it's not a hard book to read. It's kind of long. Okay, it's got a number of chapters in it.
Here's the soulless version you can get on Amazon.
Okay.
Okay, that's the front cover. Forget it.
The soulless.
I would prefer to. So I say this because I like getting texts from like used bookstores when I find them.
Come to think of it, I do too. I think I like to go to used bookstores and.
That somebody else has read it, and sometimes you will see their notes on the books.
Yeah,
sometimes what they got out of this,
Sometimes there's like chocolate ice cream in the middle of the pages stuck together.
That's great. All right. Okay, so for all our viewers who have stuck around for so long,
thank you. Bless you.
Much. Feel free to leave any questions behind. Any other ones, that is. All right, so thank you for our Patreon supporters, Kyle Baker, Sam Welsh, and John Graves, for your kindly monthly donations. You can, if you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/SG2 on space. Of course, if you want to, like, subscribe.
Like, subscribe. Share with your friends. Let's see, what else do they say? I think there's like a little bell you need to ring. You could ring also.
You could do that. I mean, so there's a bell you could ring, right? Like, so when it starts live streaming, you would know when things are happening, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So you can save the playlist and put the bell there.
Yeah. So, and put comments. You can, if you're actually listening to my voice right now, make a comment. Write a comment in the YouTube thing. Say something.
Leonard Kramer has a great voice, so leave a comment.
Yeah, leave a comment.
Can you believe I just said that? There you go.
Yeah,
that's my comment to your.
Thank you.
To your verbal comment right now.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna have to. I was gonna say cut it short, but it's really not short.
We're cutting it long.
We're gonna have to cut it long. There you go.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead.
We've gone 3 times longer than our target, so
it's okay.
All right.
All right, everybody. We'll be back as always next time on another exciting topic of who knows what. Right?
That's right. Who knows? We'll think of something.
We will.
In a couple weeks, probably a week or so.
Yep, sounds good. Keep your eyes posted and peeled for the ones that will say upcoming. So. Oh yeah.
Bye.
Okay, great. Okay, take care. Namaste.
Everyone, be well.
Say.
Shalom.
Shalom, and then you do the what? I did it for you.
You love that, don't you? Okay.
It's funny. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.